freedom. Not yet. Supposed to stay in your seat until the plane reaches the terminal. No frequent flyer mileage for you.
Who are you?
A cop.
A cop?
Yeah, one of the good guys. You see, you're one of the bad guys, and now that I got your sorry ass, I'm gonna trade it for my wife.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. All right. I'm Reese. To my left is
David.
Further to my left,
Irina. Sorry, I had to
swallow your drink.
Swallow my drink.
And who's that over there?
Marvin.
Oh, also known
Marvin?
as
Noah.
Marvin. Who's Marvin?
He's the janitor.
Oh,
Yeah.
You sounded like a little boy. Marvin.
and
I can't do it right.
unfortunately, our next member can't be with us because his flight's been delayed at the Dulles Airport. That is
AJ?
Me?
Wait, he
Is it
seems
me?
to be here.
yeah, he's calling in from one of the little phone booths there, so he can still speak on the episode. Fortunately,
There's a line of angry people waiting behind him.
it's like, sorry guys, I'll just be another hour and a half. Anyway, today we're talking about Die Hard 2, a movie up until last week I thought was titled Die Hard 2: Die Harder.
It might as well be.
And honestly, I've seen it titled that way on certain sites, but it is officially Die Hard 2. But the subtitle, it's commonly referred to as Die Harder because that quote
it's
is
bigger.
it's on the poster bigger. But this is Die Hard 2.
Man, I
It's a
got
movie
it so close this time.
What'd
I
you
mean,
do?
AJ.
It was Bruce Willis. I mean, sans hair, but hard kill. I mean, it's kind of going with that same
Die
same
Hard.
thing.
I haven't even heard of that movie.
That's an actual movie, though?
No, it's like a more recent. I don't know. Obviously, they're making reference to the Die Hard name.
He's done like 10 different like direct to DVDs. Is it
Yeah.
one of that collection?
Probably. I mean, the Wikipedia article, the plot is literally like 3 sentences. So
That's
He
great.
fight, he kill, he win.
So your homework this week was pretty easy.
yeah,
Anyway, this movie came out in 1990, a mere 2 years after the first film. A very quick turnaround on this one. The first one was a massive success that people weren't exactly expecting to be as big as it was, but it was. So here's your sequel.
So here's the thing. Did it come out like literally 2 years after?
Yes.
Or did they like wait for the box office and then start and then like...
No, they saw the box office, and I think they fast-tracked it.
Dang,
I don't think
that
there
is
were,
really quick.
Yeah, I don't think there were actually any plan. Of course, any movie wants a sequel, so that's always in the back of people's
Yeah.
minds. But I don't think it was officially put into production until the box office results came in.
Well, good for them.
But this one did not secure the original director, although he did want to come back. He was busy doing a different film, and they had to get rolling on this.
wonder.
Yeah, so
That
this one was
explains a
directed.
lot.
Yeah, this one was directed by Renny Harlin, who also directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Cliffhanger, that's Sylvester Stallone movie, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Deep Blue Sea. He's also known as directing one of the biggest bombs in history, Cutthroat Island. Not necessarily a terribly reviewed movie, but it cost something like $10 million. I mean, it made something like $10 million off of a $98 million budget. So,
What was it called?
Cutthroat Island.
Okay, I don't know. I'll just go watch Piranha 3D.
It was like a mid-90s pirate movie.
Oh, okay. You sold it.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, John McTiernan gone for this one. He would be back for the third one though, so
Nice.
don't worry too much. This movie stars Bruce Willis, Bonnie Bedelia, Reginald VelJohnson, Franco Nero, William Sadler, Dennis Franz, Art Evans, Fred Dalton Thompson, and Tom Bauer. The movie was written by Stephen E. D'Souza and Doug Richardson. And this is actually something interesting about Die Hard. This movie was also based off of a novel, as was the first one, but they're all kind of like not really connected to one another, but they keep... The first 3 Die Hards, I think, are actually based off these individual novels that are actually not connected to each other, but Die Hard connects them and renames them. This one was based off of 58 Minutes by Walter Wager. I'm assuming I said his name right. But
But Thorpe
basically
still had rights to the characters from the first. And I think they actually spelled his name wrong on screen, oddly enough.
Yeah, and there is one reference to the title of that book in this movie, and it's they say they have 58 minutes to save the people, and there you go.
8 minutes, name drop.
Anyway, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So you guys, had y'all seen Die Hard 2 before this episode? Noah?
Very long time ago, but I have no real memory of it.
Yeah. AJ?
Pretty sure I have not. If I had,
Okay.
I've completely forgot it.
Yeah, it's not one of those movies that really is all that memorable. I won't say it's good or bad just yet, but it is not nearly as memorable as the first one. Arena?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this one. I kind of assumed I might have, but while I was watching it, I realized that none of this was familiar, so.
The only thing I remember is just him hanging off a plane, and that's about it.
This was the original extremely long runway that never ends.
I was wondering why it took so long to take off.
They're like, I'm
like,
waiting
well,
for John McClane
They're like looking
to
in
show
there.
up.
Oh, they haven't finished their fight. Let's see what happens. David, how about you?
Never saw it, and I thought maybe someone wearing that something in there would show up, and I'm like, okay, maybe I saw this on the background. None of this was familiar to me at all. So.
Yeah. You mean y'all's dads aren't big Die Hard fans? They didn't watch?
I mean, we watched the first Die Hard a lot.
Yeah. It seems like it's one of those movies that where the whole series seems like they're all dad movies. You just kind of expect it to all dads
Bruce
raise their
Willis
kids
is-
on the Die Hard
It's
films.
the first man crush that a lot of them had. Like, oh, Bruce Willis, look at this guy. He has thinning hair just like me.
But
Yeah, that's
he's
right. He was-
cool, and he gets hit on
he
by
doesn't.
every female in the airport.
He doesn't play by the rules. He yells at cops all the time because they're stupid.
How many times do you think he did that, the little ring move to show that he's married? Like,
Heyo, look at
Married.
me.
just the faxes, thanks.
He looks like he
yeah.
loves doing that.
Yeah. And also, I had seen this movie before. I remembered most of it, but I've always seen it as kind of like a pale imitation of the first one. Mm-hmm. Until this episode, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe my opinion has changed.
Maybe.
But let's do the call to action real quick.
But yeah, we're doing our best to make the best movie podcast out there that we can for you guys. So if you guys want to help us on this journey, like, comment, subscribe. We have a YouTube that we are trying to
do you
post stuff. I don't know why I do, because we did. We have it. It's there. We also have an Instagram that I'm in charge of. Reese got us a Twitter that we're pushing stuff out on there a lot now. So please come
Our
and follow us.
YouTube is a cul-de-sac.
It'll redirect
It'll
you.
pay off one day.
Get back on that. So yeah, please do stuff.
All right, with that perfectly executed call to action, let's get to the story.
Listen, honey, when you land, can we check into a hotel or leave the kids with your parents? Order some room service?
You're on, Lieutenant.
I'll see you in about a half an hour, honey.
Jingle bell rock.
Christmas Eve.
Is there a cop on duty around here?
Airport police.
Go get him.
Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring.
Washington, D.C. International Airport.
What's this about?
Oh, just a feeling I have.
Ouch. When you get those feelings, insurance companies start to go bankrupt.
The towers lost control.
Instrument landing system is down.
Backup systems won't come up. We've got blizzard conditions. Zero visibility.
Attention all controllers. We have a code red alert.
There's panic in the air.
This is a professional mercenary. You got the world's biggest drug dealer on his way here now. What do you need, a slide rule to figure this out? You get the hell out of my office before I throw you out of my damn airport.
And terror on the ground.
Who is this?
Who I am is unimportant. What I want is very important. Oh, we are just up to our neck in terrorists again, John.
But for police officer John McClane, damn it, I hate it when I'm right. It's just another Christmas.
You're the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
in my life.
On Christmas Eve 1990, 2 years after the Nakatomi Tower incident, former New York City police officer John McClane is now working for the Los Angeles Police Department and is waiting at Washington Dulles International Airport for his wife Holly to arrive from Los Angeles. Reporter Richard Thornburg, who exposed Holly's identity to Hans Gruber in the Nakatomi Tower, is assigned a seat across the aisle from her. In the airport bar, McClane observes 2 men in army fatigues behaving suspiciously and pursues them into the baggage area. After a shootout, McClane kills one of them, Oswald Cochran, while the other escapes. Learning that Cochran was believed to have been killed in action while serving in Honduras, McClane relates the situation to Airport Police Captain Carmine Lorenzo, who bluntly dismisses his concerns. Naked dude, obviously a villain.
First thing we get.
Okay, so when I first saw this scene, my first thought was Apocalypse Now, where, doing the moves.
They were definitely
kind of naked
riffing off of
in
that.
a room.
He should have lifted the mattress and kicked it, though. I mean, all we get is a really aggressive remote click.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that part.
Got him.
I'm so fast.
Also,
my reflexes.
There's no such thing as a TV that is that quick to respond when you click the button off.
Especially
Dude, I would have loved if it didn't turn off immediately. Yeah. You had to click it again. You know, you have to get the right angle.
I know.
Wait. I
check the batteries.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, I have like a 4K LG TV, and I press the button,
wow,
and
why
it takes
don't you
about
brag
5
about
seconds
it?
before it powers up, or turns off. Like,
Anyway, the Stewart guy, I believe, is
Colonel
his name.
Stewart.
Yeah, played by William Sadler. I got major Robert Patrick vibes from this guy, and Robert Patrick actually later shows up in this movie. He's from T2, the Liquid Terminator.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe it's because the first time you see both of them, they're naked.
I definitely got that. I definitely got
know.
that vibe from him.
So I read that was his name, Renny Harlin.
Yeah, Renny Harlin.
It was his idea to do this naked villain, and he's like, man, I really want him to do martial arts while he's naked to really sell it. He goes, but looking on it later, he would say it was effective but unusual.
People listening who haven't seen the movie probably think by this that he's naked throughout the whole movie. Which would make this movie a lot more interesting.
It actually would be really interesting.
Honestly, because of this scene, I got the impression that he was going to be a lot more insane, kind of really, really disturbed.
Yeah, and I thought the fight between them at the end would be much more knocked out, drag out for a long period of time.
Exactly.
But he's pretty over and done with once they get out on the wing, within a couple minutes.
Yeah. Other than doing martial arts naked, he's pretty normal.
Yeah. I will say, and we'll get into the villain later, I do think he does a good job of distinguishing himself from Hans Gruber as a different type of villain who is kind of ups the ante, although the director, Renny Harlin, goes completely against what McTiernan thought made the villains interesting in the first one, which is McTiernan didn't want them to be terrorists. He wanted them to be robbers because that's it just is more fun. You can have more fun with it. In this one, they're straight up terrorists.
Yeah.
Which is something McTiernan was totally trying to avoid. He specifically wanted the word terrorist taken out of it.
Right.
And this one's like, nah, we need terrorists.
Which, I mean, are they terrorists by the standard means? Because
they're terrorists. They brought down a plane.
No, I know that, but their goal wasn't actually to bring down the plane. Their goal was to have them comply so they could get a plane and get this drug.
No, once
cartel?
they committed to bringing down that one plane, there was nothing that could have convinced them to save it.
Well, I know that. I just know. I feel like terrorists, in my mind, are their end goal is to bring down the plane. That's their whole goal, is to cause terror. Where this one is more like they have a goal in mind that doesn't involve killing people.
Well, terrorists by definition,
they cause terror.
That causes terror. So
but that wasn't their goal, though.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be their goal, though.
I don't know.
Anyway, this could go on.
Yeah.
So we're introduced to John McClane once more. I think his charisma is still intact in this movie. I don't think his one-liners are as good.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but it felt like whatever they did in the first movie, they were trying to replicate, but it felt forced. In the first one, Bruce Willis, it almost seemed like he was kind of riffing off his character a little bit. But in this one, there was a lot of planted one-liners where I can tell he's selling it, but it just feels like a strange time to have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they took the essence of Die Hard sprinkle off the spice rack, but it was stale. So it wouldn't have the same potency.
Whereas the first one was Bruce Willis playing John McClane. This one's Bruce Willis playing John McClane.
So I'm just gonna say I did see on IMDb Facts. There we go.
Got it.
I got it. I know what I'm doing. I can talk. They actually liked his improv on the first one so much that this one it was more improv. They gave him more free reign.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
Exactly. See, it wasn't the writers though doing it. It was him trying to replicate. So in a way, you're right, Reese. I think he was trying to replicate himself from the first movie.
It wasn't only him though. It was his supporting cast as well.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a couple of one-liners that really do hit home in the right way, but there is no like ho 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 now I have a machine gun moment.
Yeah,
Nope.
yeah.
It's just it's like law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is that it's the timing of them, in my opinion, where in the first one he's very kind of begrudgingly doing this. Mm-hmm. And in this, I don't really feel the threat of the situation. I don't feel the pressure on him to do what he's doing. It's just I'm kind of having fun.
Well, the problem is it's not a cat and mouse in this one.
Yeah.
He's got much more of a landscape to explore, more freedom. And
there's nothing wrong with that.
And he's wearing shoes.
Yeah.
He wasn't thrust into the situation. He actually actively involved himself in the situation.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And that's something that I think was necessary for them to do in the sequels, to mix it up slightly, even though this still does feel like a rehash of the first one in certain ways. But you had to, he can't be in another tower and have this happen again, even though it is still like a massive coincidence that he's involved in another situation like this.
And I do appreciate that they are self-aware in that fact. They kind of make a joke about it.
They do realize, wow, why is this happening to me again? Like, he actually says it on Christmas.
And then she also says it. Like, why does it keep happening to us?
Well, we talked about the tower, and I do appreciate the airport as a setting. And I do get the Christmas-y vibe a little bit more than the first. So I appreciate the setting. And there was some attempt where in the first they, tried to foreshadow and allude to the layout of stuff. And they alluded to there's a blizzard coming and all this stuff to kind of make you already familiar with what's going to happen later. Right. But I don't think it was as successful as the first one did it.
Yeah.
So I agree. And the movie tries to address this coincidence of him being in another situation tonally as well. Like, I don't think this movie would work if it was as taken as seriously as the first one, because the situation alone is like highly unlikely. Right. So it almost doubles down on being a little more ridiculous in certain ways. And you do start to think like, how would this everyman get into a second situation like this? The only way for a sequel really to work is if you really do heighten it up to a more extreme kind of level. But it also suffers from that as well.
Yeah. And this was more extreme, in my opinion.
It is. That's what I'm saying.
It is an interesting take to have John McClane in the first one. He's desperate for help. Anyone's help. Yeah. And they're not there. Or he's not able to contact them. Yep. But in this one, he's almost annoyed by everyone's help, that they're doing it all wrong.
Well, it's because they're not listening to him.
Yeah, this actually rubbed me the wrong way, because I found myself almost agreeing with his opposition.
What?
Not Lorenzo. I was Lorenzo's
at first,
no, Lorenzo
he does.
Sucked.
Okay, he sucks, but he brings up a logical point. Like, it's at the airport during Christmas. It's super, super busy.
People had guns and were shooting. I think it logically, but
you have this guy that, like, he announced himself as a cop. He runs into an unauthorized area, and then there was a gunfight. Like that. I mean, it's he looks a little heated, and
they do have to have to check in on the situation. But here's the thing. Lorenzo, there were people that found the gunmen, and they had some pretty serious weaponry on them. I agree.
I agree.
And they also didn't want to go back into dust or go through prints and everything.
Ultimately, I agree with him. The guy should have checked in on it and followed it up, but he was not being the most reasonable person.
To me, it seemed like a macho thing where he's like, I'm the chief around here, and you're just an LAPD police officer that's breaking all my rules. I'm not going to listen to you because I'm in charge. It didn't feel like he actually cared.
They brought that in later.
It's both.
It is both. I mean, he's a lieutenant, I think, and he's not like a CIA agent or something like that. Just some cop from a different, across the country. Yes, the guys were lazy, but like Noah's right. Like he's kind of going rogue and trying to, shove his weight around, and
and they probably think he's like, he thinks he's a celebrity. He can just swing his weight around here.
But when you do have people with guns that are doing very, very shifty things and no one else is doing anything about it, he's got to be a little belligerent to get someone's attention.
Right. I get that.
Yeah.
I mean,
he had a
he's
Glock
right,
7.
but okay, so here's the thing. John McClane is right, but he ruffled feathers the wrong way. Like, whereas in the smart one, in the first one, he played... He played it a little smarter. I don't know, like...
Freudian slip.
Yeah. My sentence got, like, warped. But in the first one, he played it a little smarter. He, like, called all the people he tried to, and it was completely up to their absolute incompetence and lack of trust in him that led to the issue that arose where he had to drop a body on a cop car.
Amazing.
Which was awesome. But this one, he just kind of, goes on his own, shoots some guy, kills him, causes a lot of trouble.
Him first.
Okay, yeah,
self-defense.
I know that it was self-defense, but there was no way of proving that. And then he was like trying to push his weight around. Yeah. Now, I am on his side because I'm able to witness everything. Right. But to someone who hasn't witnessed everything,
right,
it's a little harder to.
Okay, fair enough.
Noah, Noah, I'm with you. Like, I understand that we have to have a hero, so he has to be, in the spotlight, taking command. Exactly. It's an action movie, so we need that star power. But it is a little bit jarring compared to the first because of the situational, context that he's in with him, taking charge. Like I said, forcing himself on the situation instead of being thrust in it. It kind of reverses the expectation we're going into it, and so it puts the audience kind of on their heels a little bit, withdrawing, saying, okay, what's going on with him? Like, why is this? I don't know. That's how I saw it. So I understand where you're coming from, Noah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also, I am glad it is here as a function of the plot to create the same sort of tension that we had in the first one, where you felt like John McClane barely ever gets his way. There's always someone opposing him, and it's all about him getting around that, and that's what makes him interesting.
Right.
And that's repeated in this, I feel like.
He's a loose cannon cop who doesn't play by the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the stereotype I was thinking.
His ego's writing checks his body can't cash.
The more I think about it, y'all are right. If the officer had just been like, yeah, you're right, let's everything you say, John McClane, that's what we need, this movie would be over a lot more quickly.
It sure would.
Y'all ready to move on?
Yes.
Former U.S. Special Forces Colonel William Stewart and other former members of his unit establish a base in a church near Dulles. They hack into the air traffic control systems, sever communication with the planes, and deactivate the runway lights, leaving Dulles ATC powerless to land aircraft. Their goal is to rescue General Ramon Esperanza, a drug lord and dictator of Valverde, who is being extradited to the United States to stand trial on drug trafficking charges. They demand a Boeing 747 cargo plane so they can escape to another country with Esperanza in tow, and warn the airport controllers not to try to restore control. With his wife on one of the planes circling above Washington, D.C., with too little fuel to be redirected, McClane prepares to fight the terrorists, allying himself with a janitor, Marvin, to gain larger access to the airport. All right. So I actually like this plot development. I think it's a situation that feels like it is up to the stakes in a successful way. Mm-hmm. The idea of having all these planes like burning fuel over this airport where the lights are off.
I agree.
That's a tense and scary situation.
Yeah, especially for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they didn't pull any punches with one of them landing.
No, yeah. The rosy outlook I had on the end of this movie is that, a plane might almost crash, but in the end, they'll all be saved.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the part where a plane actually goes down.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't think we're there yet.
It would have mentioned, because that's a huge part of the plot. Yeah.
But this sets a ticking clock on the movie where I was like, okay, we have some momentum now. This isn't just like a typical action movie. I'm kind of more into this now.
Yeah.
How about you?
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think one thing that would push that a little more for me is if we spent a little more time with the occupants on the plane, you know, so you can really feel that moment where lives were lost.
Well,
you know?
I was actually weirdly connected to that flight because I recognized the pilot. It's Cole Meany, that actor.
Yeah, I
and I was like,
recognized him
oh,
too.
they'll be safe. There's recognizable people on this flight. And
What
I
else was
thought
he
they did a
in?
decent job of at least giving them a little bit of time. There's an especially effective scene, and we'll get to it later.
think I know which one you're
but where
talking
the flight attendant's like checking on the people, it's like, yeah, we're landing. It's going to be great.
It's going to be
all
all right.
And you see this like sweet old lady. And it's like,
I gotta say, I am so happy I watched this movie after I made a plane flight.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We just had 4 plane
You
flights in a
could
short
not-
amount of time.
You could not
us,
get me on a
we're not
plane
good with
after that.
planes. We do not like them.
Whoa.
So maybe that contributed to my enjoyment of this movie, but you know, I get sweaty palms thinking about flights.
It is interesting that in 2 movies out of Die Hard, there is that plane anxiety,
Yeah.
you know, incorporated in the film.
Yeah. No, yep. I mean,
I do like the way the stewardesses handle the situation, though, a lot of the time, especially on the flight where his Mrs. McClane is on there. And, oh, man, I want to jump back and forth between 2 things, but there's that part where they know things are going wrong, and they are reassuring the people there that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, this is we trained for this. We have extra fuel just in case we have to stay up here longer, and trying to make sure there's not mass panic on an airplane.
yeah.
I also like the humor they add whenever they give Mrs. McClane champagne because the other guy's a
Oh
douche.
yeah.
I did.
His name's literally Dick. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
William Atherton's character being on the plane, like, that was a good inclusion. That was smart, giving the secondary conflict, you know, so that we have the grounding, although it's in the air, for the emotional investment, because I felt like McClane's character was, you know, kind of less fleshed out from a human perspective in this movie.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I missed that, but it helped with, you know, having her and the reporter on the same flight, you know, as that secondary
Definitely.
arc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed those moments because he was such a skis ball.
Although, again, this must have been so easy to write because it's basically the first one. Again, you've paired up these 2 characters again as kind of the simmering subplot that you have going on in the back of your mind as McClane's going about his ways. So I don't know if it's effective just because it was successful in the first, but it's still lazy writing. I don't know.
Well, it's good to see her holding her own. Again, you know, in the hostage situation in the first, she held her own. She was, you know, the spokeswoman for the hostages, you know, speaking with Hans Gruber and stuff. Here, she's still kind of just sitting back in her chair, taking everything in stride, being aware of the situation, but being calm, and then also taking out Dick, I guess his name.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
With a taser.
but I'm kind of on the flip side with I'm still with the movie at this point. I guess I kind of have a disadvantage for suspension of disbelief for this movie because I have a lot of like family and more familiar with like FAA stuff and airport like operations and how directing traffic and air traffic and all that stuff works. So when things kind of go on with this movie, I kind of lost the ability to suspend disbelief a little bit with the plot. And what it would have helped me more with that, to kind of turn a blind eye to that, is following the motive of the antagonist. Hans Gruber, I could follow his motive. He explained, you know, this kind of goes back to the terrorism debate a little bit, but at least in the beginning, Hans Gruber establishes his stakes. Here, Stewart, like, I understand he's trying to get the, you know,
extradite the government
exactly,
general.
but like, I wanted to see more of a methodical villain still plotting out this giant master plan and putting all these, you know, pieces in motion, where it seems like a lot of this movie hinges on the weather, which is just an uncontrollable factor.
Yeah.
Right.
And also as you're saying, the Stewart guy, I wanted to know why they were so supportive of this general. Like they have like one line that's cast aside like real quickly. It's just like, oh yeah, without this general, they wouldn't be able to get anything done.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And I'm like, well, what? I want to know
without
more.
Without motive,
Yeah.
I couldn't like just invest in my emotional energy in the movie because I didn't know why people were doing what they were doing.
Well, I think that's kind of part of what this movie is, and I noticed the same thing where by the end of it, I can't say I was paying attention 100%, but I do feel like this movie just gives you buzzwords and buzz images to keep you satisfied because you hear the words terrorism, you hear the words drug cartel, and
insert
then,
explosion here.
So like you're like terrorist, drug cartel. That's all I need to know, like
Yeah.
And then you just kind of move on, and then you're given a bunch of explosions. These are the bad guys. These are the good guys, and you're satisfied. But if you try to think about the motives of all these people, you can't really explain away why they're going to all these great lengths at an airport to create this scheme.
Well, it's because they had to, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one line of dialogue in here where they're mentioning something about Stewart leaving his duties, I guess you could say, for money or whatever. Like there was some mention of him
he went rogue. I think
like going rogue for the sake of like a big paycheck.
Well, and in this case, they aligned themselves with some drug cartels, and that guy was in custody, is what I thought.
Yeah, he was being extradited to the U.S. to stand trial.
Yeah.
For war or drug crimes or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a weak motivation.
I don't know. It was easy enough for me to latch onto him. Like, some guy went rogue. He's helping this drug cartel guy.
Yeah.
It's taking place in an airport. But what really set it for me was his willingness to show that he's not messing around. And I know we're gonna get to that, but I mean, compared to Hans Gruber, I think he does a slightly better job at being menacing by just going straight for the kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll quickly talk about John McClane teaming up with Marvin, the janitor, and there's that whole ambush, I guess, later on.
I'm gonna say David brought up this point, and since I was thinking the same thing when we were watching it, it might be worth bringing up. But when we were watching this movie, both of us had connections to the Dollars trilogy in a weird way.
Really?
Because Marvin kind of reminded us of David
Pino
in particular.
Nieto, I think, was his name in that movie, but he was the carpenter, I believe.
Oh.
Well, so you know how the man with no name kind of comes to this, he's kind of hiding out in the mines or whatever, and the kind of character actor comes to check on him all the time. That Marvin kind of plays this eccentric character actor figure,
true.
and McClane is kind of just hiding in the background somewhere, beaten up,
licking his wounds.
Yeah. So I don't know. We just started, for some reason, we both had similar ideas
That's so
about
funny.
this
I would have never
character.
thought about it, but it's
interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but
especially
lot of
since the
tropes I
first
feel like these old
directly
movies
drew connections to the American Western.
Yep. So it's that, and then the other connection I made was the villains kind of hiding out in a church, which was for a few dollars more. They had their little meeting in a church.
Wow, I wonder
where
if
he
this was all
discussed
just
his
coincidence or
plans.
like.
I don't know,
I'm
and
sure
we
it
talked
is.
about that too, where sometimes coincidence can be like you have a memory of something but don't realize you're drawing from it.
Yeah. All right. I kind of like their buddying up. As you forget about it halfway through the movie.
Where
and it
you
kinda
been,
comes back to
Pearl
it,
Harbor?
Ugh.
Yeah. It was kind of like this eccentric character that comes in kind of out of nowhere.
I'm the janitor.
I do think it
honestly, I don't think he was actually hired. He just found that space and he's been
Hiding out.
living there.
For whatever reason, he's got
And
all
then
his
Leslie, who can turn a
blueprints.
walkie-talkie into a communications with air traffic.
Oh yeah, that's how those work. All right, let's move on. Dulles Communications Director Leslie Barnes heads to an unfinished antenna array with a SWAT team to reestablish communications with the planes, but are ambushed by Stewart's henchmen, and the SWAT team is killed in the ensuing firefight. McClane rescues Barnes and kills Stewart's men. Stewart retaliates by recalibrating the instrument landing system and then impersonating air traffic controllers to crash a British jetliner, killing everyone on board. A U.S. Army Special Forces team led by Major Grant is called in. By listening in on a two-way radio that was dropped by one of Stewart's henchmen, McClane finds out that Esperanza, having killed his captors and now piloting the plane carrying him to Dulles, is landing. I was
Real stakes.
Yeah, I was on board for this when they bring down the plane. That was a cool explosion too.
That being said, if they were out of fuel, how did it explode like that?
No, they weren't out of fuel.
No.
This one was told to come down.
I know, but it was low on fuel. They
still
were
had fuel.
No,
Even
they
if it
literally
did
said
have
before
fuel.
it went down that they were like running on fumes.
But they still have something.
Look, it exploded in a Michael Bay way. It was a little exaggerated. I don't know if planes do that, but I still liked it.
We're not going for realism here, clearly, because John McClane jumped down onto the tarmac with 2 torches in his hands trying to flag the thing down.
Hey, I would have tried
That hasn't happened.
I actually liked that.
Really?
That has happened?
I did not.
Okay, so I think we got mixed up because I guess the big plane crash actually did happen, but we didn't mention it.
No, this was the big plane
Yeah,
crash.
so basically
Oh,
we
okay.
have him and the technician guy going over to the annex on their own to try to get to the antenna array.
Right.
And I guess there's your check mark of Die Hard of John McClane crawling through an air duct.
Right.
I don't know if that's in the other movies or not, but I thought that was funny. The action scene with the ambush, I enjoyed the scene where it's the gunfight and the scaffolding and
Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Although their aim is terrible.
Yeah, that's another issue I have with this movie is the editing. Like all of his stunts, like they didn't chop off the beginning where he starts the jump and it just looks fake.
Yeah.
That happened a few times, but
Bruce
yeah,
Willis doesn't do his stunts.
I think they did that in both this one and the first one as well, where none of the enemy's bullets seem to land.
Well, some of them end up being blanks.
Well, yeah, okay, but that's later.
Yeah.
I think the first one, this was one of those, I can look over it for the first one, and I feel like if I'm holding the first one to that standard, I'll hold it to the same standard for the second one.
Yeah.
Where a number of bullets miss. For whatever plot armor on Bruce Willis is what that is.
I think you are touching upon something that this movie deviated from the first, where you don't really feel the pain. In the first one, you can feel his pain because he's not wearing shoes.
Yeah.
He's multiple times going through broken glass, and when there are shots, they're sparingly.
Yeah.
So you feel that suspense, you feel the threat. In this one, there's a barrage of elements like explosions and gunfire, and he seems to come out like, even though it shows he's maimed, you never really feel it. He's an action hero.
Well, I think my theory on this is I don't think he's getting any less banged up.
Yeah.
But this movie relies a lot more on John McClane being lucky than being resourceful.
Yeah.
And he just kind of like lucks his way out of all of these situations. It's like someone would have died from that. He would have died in this, but he happened to get out. The other ones, it's like, oh, he's just scraping by the skin of his teeth. And it makes sense why he would survive, would get through this, because he makes character decisions that are in keeping with getting out of a situation like this. In this one, you just see him getting out of it, and you're like, how'd he survive that?
Well,
there is that element, but like Irina said, like the realism is just kind of thrown out the window in this one, where the first one you're literally counting bullets, and the last 2 bullets in his magazine are used with the showdown.
Right.
Here it's like he shoots 30 rounds out of one magazine that probably holds 15. So and you don't feel the pain, and that's a good point. Like you see him walking in boots on the glass, and all the the spent casings and everything, but there's no the physical pain or emotional pain. Like you don't feel the torture of his being scared or wounded and hurt. Just like it is a different movie. It's like they focused on the big blockbuster action.
Right.
Yeah. And in a similar vein, like this jumps a little bit forward, but he also ignores all protocol that he would have personally as a policeman. He's in a helicopter flying near terrorists with civilians.
Yeah.
That is not something
go in front of the aircraft. Like,
Hey
Play
man,
chicken
his
with
wife
aircraft.
was on that plane.
Okay, see, you can explain. Well, his wife was not on that
No,
plane.
but that's the line he says is like, because he heard them talking because they were coming to land.
His wife was on a separate plane
No,
planning to land
Exactly,
there.
but he had to stop that plane before that one could land. So he was like, "Oh no, I got to do this now."
Yeah. Okay.
anyway,
Well,
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I know, but there's no real reason why he would have to stop that one in order for his wife to land, unless he knew.
Well, that was the urgency
gonna
they were
happen.
playing off.
Yeah,
of.
I know,
Whether or not
I know.
it's logical, I don't know.
What I had a problem with was his willingness to put civilians in danger for the sake of his own
Yeah,
means.
I
It's
get
just
that.
the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we move on, any final words on this awesome plane crash that I think was very well executed, even though it didn't look like the plane flew straight into the ground. It looked like it was landing, but
well, that's the confusing part. It was like skidding along. I was like, oh, they made it. And then eventually it explodes. I'm like, oh, crap.
I think that there was just no practical way to actually show a plane crash and blow up on a tarmac. But I still think for what they had in 1990,
no, dude, really
well executed sequence, and I think it does, as I've mentioned before, up the stakes in a way that I think gives the movie a nice little adrenaline shot, even if it is so ridiculous compared to the first movie. I'm still enjoying this.
I think for that one, I could see that happening, that exact situation. I mean, I can't speak to how big the explosion would have been. I don't really know anything about that.
Yeah.
But as far as a plot point, I think it's a good plot point.
I wish, because I'm with you, Reese, the explosion was big, and that's like, the gravitational pull of, okay, things are real now. But still, this is the opportunity for Stewart to twist the knife in the wound to really see, look, I'm serious. Like, he kind of said that this is going to happen, I told you so, that kind of stuff, but he really didn't, knock the ball out of the ballpark with what was lobbed to him, with that opportunity to be like, okay, this is a real, guy, bad guy. I still felt like, okay, I'm still wondering what his motivation is. Why did he just blow up a plane? And he's not capitalizing on this opportunity to really sell me as a evil person.
And maybe, do you know what it was missing? And this would probably make it even closer to aping the first movie, but it's missing that dialogue between him and McClane, where they're having this back and forth, and how he had with Hans Gruber.
Right.
I did notice that it's very isolationist. You have multiple. You have the scenes, the bad guys, the air traffic control tower, on the plane, McClane himself with Leslie. They're all isolated.
Yeah,
whereas the first, they're literally
separated.
sharing a walkie channel, a party line.
Right.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe they knew that and they were like, no, we can't do everything exactly the way the first movie was. So maybe it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess.
It's almost like
Probably.
they tried to do the same thing, but added too many elements, but didn't connect them all. It's a little confusing. I understand the different focal points. There's the tower, there are the bad guys, there's John McClane and Marvin, and then there's, the every now and then cuts to the plane that Holly is on. Yeah. But when you jump to each of them, you don't actually really feel that they're connected, and that's the issue, because it's kind of jarring rather than progressing.
Yeah.
So the thing about this movie is I can agree with a number of criticisms of it, but I also think it's really, none of it to me is bad.
Yes.
I think all of this has been really entertaining, and I had a good time watching the whole thing. Sure, there are a number of things that don't line up right.
It's just as following up an absolutely iconic classic.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
it is.
Yeah, I think the first one is just almost perfect. Well, for what it is perfect.
This movie is just not boring.
And and this one is the follow-up to that, which are large shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And I think they still did a good job. I mean, I know.
I think the main argument though is that they could have done a better job.
Yeah, they could have. I think my main issue is just they didn't have an amazing villain.
I think and AJ has something to say.
Yeah.
No, I directly disagree with what David said. The boringness,
okay.
the dullness of this, this explosion was the last spike of momentum to capture my attention, and it carried it a little bit, but I don't know, it didn't keep my interest.
Hey man, we can all be wrong sometimes, and I think that it got more exciting as it went because they kept upping the ante in almost stupid ways. Now, I'm not saying that what they did was right. What they did was entertaining. I mean, they got creative with the deaths in this one, okay? Every time it almost just made me laugh more. I'm like, okay, you hooked me for another 10 minutes. Show me something else stupid. And then they'll show me some other stupid thing.
And they bring out the jet skis.
Or they stab in the eye with an icicle. I don't know.
I get that. No, and I think I'm getting too far ahead of myself because I've isolated what, I take issue with this movie is, and I understand the people that like this movie and the people that don't. And I I know what I want to say, so I'm not going to jump ahead of it.
Right.
I think we can all agree, though, it's not the same as the first movie. That's
All right.
100%.
Let's move on. With Marvin's aid, McClane reaches the aircraft before Stewart's henchmen. Trapping him in the cockpit, the mercenaries throw in grenades, but McClane escapes via the ejection seat seconds before the grenades detonate. Barnes helps McClane locate the mercenaries' hideout, and they tell Grant and his team to raid the location, but the mercenaries escape on snowmobiles. McClane pursues them, but is stunned to discover the mercenaries' guns are loaded with blanks, concluding that the Special Forces team are in fact Stewart's subordinates.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Okay,
here's your big
this
twist.
I honestly feel like it was building up in the beginning, it waned and kind of lost my interest, and now at this point I'm like, okay, now we're getting silly with it.
Okay, let's take the temperature though. Who did not suspect this Special Forces team? Who thought that they were actually, trying to get the job done?
I thought they were good.
And who thought they were villains?
I thought they were good as well.
Okay, y'all were fooled then.
I was
Same
fooled.
here.
I was fooled.
I thought they did a good job with that, and having
Yeah.
what's his name, the guy who played Grant in
Yeah.
that lead role, and having them kind of have the the back and forth with McClane
John
convinced me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Him being first against him, and then later, like, you know what?
You're my kind of asshole.
Yeah. Exactly. I was like, I like this guy. Good.
Yeah.
And then
He does that throat
Because we get
scene.
validation for McClane's rogue,
Right.
going off the hooks.
It really is weird how much just validation can convince you of a person.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I mean, I thought it was weird how he just completely did a 180. I thought, well, that was a little odd for him to do that, but I thought that was just up like the writing, you know.
Yeah. Still, again, this would have been enhanced by just knowing why they were doing this.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
have
literally
some-
no reason.
Or
Yeah.
even if that character was in there a little longer.
Yeah.
You know, like if there were a little more interaction between him and McClane,
Yeah, like
I
build
think
that
that
bond
would have
a
been
little
like,
more.
oh no, you traitor, kind of a thing.
Okay, so I was okay with the twist. I thought, that's interesting, but I almost would have preferred it if Stewart had just had the foresight and got rid of them somehow.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it was interesting to have them like turn or have them already have been bad with the blanks and all that, but I think it would have been more effective for the audience if the villain had almost personally dispatched them.
Yeah, I guess.
It would have made him seem more threatening, because that way it doesn't just look like RoboCop with Bruce Willis going in there like, all right, let's go to 50 this time.
I think they gave us enough with the villain dispatching people, though, at the beginning when he takes out the guy at the church. Where I was like, oh, dang, he just iced that guy.
Okay, yeah, but you don't see him as a personal threat, though, as much. You see, like, oh, he's ruthless, but...
I saw him as... He doesn't have much backstory or background, and I don't know what his motives are, but I saw him as a threat.
He has
And
a
I will say,
punchable face.
he just needed a longer fight with McClane to show how much of a threat
Right.
he was. I think
I get that.
the way they cap off his character is very unsatisfying.
So, which part are we talking
We
about?
should be
at this
talking
moment?
about the cockpit with the grenades.
Yeah.
I don't know why
Okay,
we aren't
no,
talking.
we just completely bypassed that. We need to talk
background.
about that.
So, for one, we get, in my opinion, the best line in the movie, which is Esperanza landing the plane and getting out and saying freedom, and then immediately John McClane's like, not yet, and just pops up out of nowhere.
The thing I do love about this movie is just how annoying John McClane is to the enemy. I do enjoy that.
They tap into that at least.
Yeah.
It's like he's an asshole, but he's our kind of asshole.
Yeah, I know.
But then Stewart and his men show up, and he becomes barricaded in the cockpit, and they throw something like 50 grenades.
Like,
in there.
no, it wasn't 50. It's probably like
I'm
10.
exaggerating.
But still, like, it was a lot of grenades.
Yeah.
And does anyone here know how long grenades hold off before they explode?
It's longer than you'd expect, but not that long.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
a
like-
long time. He like sat there and looked at it, like, that's a grenade. That's a second grenade. That's a third grenade.
Oh,
I should
dang it.
probably move.
And also, I don't know how cockpits and airplanes work, but this doesn't strike me as the type of airplane that would have an ejector seat. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
I looked up a little bit about that, and it is common to have ejector seats. I don't think they work like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I
not
know
the
they
one to
have
be-
the parachutes and stuff like that, but I always think fighter jets when I
Okay.
think of those kind of
Yeah.
things.
So I would be okay with it if they didn't have a scene where he shoots himself at the camera and says, "Oh, and then, just kind of
freeze frame.
falls out of frame.
Yeah.
It's a little over the top for me. But
I do like how they show a shot of them like looking at him parachuting off in the distance. They could have said something better, but they were just like lucky. Like, no,
Lucky
that was an
son of a-
opportunity to say something completely different.
anyway.
Like, mother, and then they cut to another scene.
Yeah. All right, ice pick kill.
Yes.
Yes.
See, we're throwing in all
you
the
mean
fun
icicle?
things. Yeah.
This is straight out of like a Halloween movie or like
is.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
This is like the third movie in a franchise where you pull out the icicle kill in a slasher movie.
Yep.
Wait, the man died, but there's no weapon. What was the murder weapon?
It is the perfect murder weapon.
Stabbed
He
in
was-
the eye with an icicle.
All the
was
shredded
napping.
soap on the ground.
He was napping under the roof.
Yeah.
Freak accident.
And this leads into another ridiculous sequence with the snowmobiles. This is another one where I'm like, how McClane is lucky rather than resourceful. He
Yeah.
somehow. This is okay for one. This seemed like he was like in the middle of a forest, but he gets on a snow slope and then jumps an 18-wheeler, and then his thing is shot and it blows up.
Yeah, I
like
didn't-
where'd that
I don't
18-wheeler
know
come
about
from?
that.
I see. This is where I feel like maybe I made a better jump in my mind than everyone else did because, and I see why. But the first part of the movie feels very different than this last part of the movie. I was just able to recognize it around this point. I was like, oh, I need to loosen my brain a little bit because this is what we're in for.
Well, no, I think the seeds are planted at the beginning. There's a scene where a guy gets killed in the luggage processing area, and it's like literally an Indiana Jones death where the guy's like
Yep.
crunched under a wheel or something.
Yeah.
And Random brings up.
And I was like,
Indiana
yeah,
Jones.
that's a sign that things are going to get a little out of hand later on. We've got
We got a
assembly
couple.
line death.
We had a couple Indiana Jones kills in this movie.
Yeah. But it's a lot of ridiculous action sequences on top of one another, and I think I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
But you do start to think like, what if they had taken this movie more seriously? What if they had like dialed it down a little bit? Would this be better?
I think I do enjoy ridiculous kills because obviously I enjoy Indiana Jones that has kind of similar kills to it, but that does bring up the point that I think there's something missing that Indiana Jones was able to capitalize on, but this one isn't.
Well, because Indiana Jones, it's campy in a charming way, and it's an adventure, and it's got a light tone not a light tone, but
And
a flightier
That
tone.
might be owed to some of the film score as well, because this one is a little bit lacking. There
Yeah,
isn't,
a
you
little.
don't feel a character exactly.
Yeah. Again, with the score in this one, I wonder if it was by the same person. I want to do my research on that
Doesn't
real quick.
even matter.
Michael Bay.
Because it's felt like the same score.
Michael Bay, the
Michael
soundtrack.
Bay.
AJ said something.
Yeah, Michael Kamen.
Yep.
Came in.
I want to say that. Was that the same guy? I think it was. I just didn't figure it out.
Yeah, same one.
Yep,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Same one.
Same composer. That tracks.
Really set the tone for the movie.
Look, again, with this one, the score, it works with what's happening on screen, but it's not ever something I'm going to be humming to. So, like I had the
Here,
DVD.
can't you hum it right now?
I'm sorry, that's Mortal Kombat 5.
All right,
Mother of God.
are we ready to move on?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. McClane demands Lorenzo intercept the Boeing 747 in which the mercenaries will escape. Lorenzo refuses to listen until an extremely fed-up McClane fires at the captain with the blank gun, thus proving his story.
Okay.
Aboard Hawley's flight, a suspicious Thornburg is monitoring airport radio traffic and learns about the situation from a secret transmission to the circling planes from Barnes. He phones in a sensational and exaggerated take on what is happening, leading to panic and preventing the officers from reaching the escape plane, until Hawley subdues Thornburg with a stun gun. McClane hitches a ride on a news helicopter that drops him off on the wing of the taxiing mercenaries 747. He jams the left inboard aileron with his jacket, preventing the plane from taking off. Grant fights McClane, but is knocked off the wing and falls into an engine, killing him. Stewart succeeds in knocking McClane off the plane and removing McClane's jacket, but fails to notice that McClane had opened the fuel hatch. McClane uses his cigarette lighter to ignite the trail of fuel, which leads up to the jet, and causes it to explode, killing the mercenaries, Esperanza, and Stewart. The circling planes use the fire trail to help them land. As the other passengers on board are rescued, Hawley and McClane happily embrace. Yay. Yeah, and this caps off all the ridiculousness. I'm pretty sure planes would not use a trail of fire to land, but let's back up a little more.
That's the first thing that stands out?
Well, it's like, let's land on the burning wreckage.
Well, look, man, they can't see anything.
Well, okay, my favorite part, though, is when the pilot says, "Oh, look, there it is," and you cut to see just plane debris.
I found it.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I guess I'll be the dissenting opinion on that. Uh-huh. They're out of fuel.
I guess
they're desperate.
No, I agree with you.
Like,
it's this
just,
whole thing is silly.
Yeah, I know.
The enthusiasm of seeing a runway on fire is kind of odd.
And the pilot's natural reaction's like, "Oh, there it is. All right, we got it."
That's true.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. Yeah.
So let's talk about the scene where McClane gets into it with Lorenzo again, and Lorenzo's about to arrest him, and instead he fires off all the blanks at him.
That was beautiful.
Where, like, in any normal situation, the cops would all pull their guns on him and probably shoot him to death.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. I love how how he just unloads on them, and the cops like, "Oh, they're blanks," and they put their guns away.
Yeah.
And if this movie could have still maintained its kind of over-the-top attitude without being completely ridiculous like this, you could have aimed into the air, fired it off, and shown that there were no bullet holes in the ceiling.
No, but instead, when he's about to be arrested, he shoves a captain, into a wall and then fires at him point blank.
And I think, full clip.
Not even
I think the intent, though, was that you're supposed to be, as an audience member, really, really frustrated with this cop. And so this scene is going to be particularly gratifying because not only did you make this cop piss his pants, but he's finally on John McClane's side.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I had that connection, you know? Like, I was like, oh, okay, we're just gonna unload on this guy. They're blanks. I didn't really feel annoyed with this character because it didn't seem believable to me.
Yeah.
He was almost a little too obstinate to be real.
Yeah, and this movie is rejecting what made the first one so great. I'm not saying this movie isn't good and entertaining. It is.
Right.
But Bruce Willis was the everyman.
Yeah.
In this scene, I pictured not Bruce Willis or John McClane. I pictured Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is exactly what an Arnold Schwarzenegger would do in one of his movies.
There's no bullets in this gun.
That is exactly what it would be like. And if you recall, in the first one, they were originally looking for bigger actors like that. Like John McClane, Sylvester Stallone. It would be this over-the-top action movie. And what do you know? That's what we ended up getting anyway. It's just with Bruce Willis in the lead role.
Got it.
He doesn't, even though he looks like an everyman still, he doesn't act like an everyman.
Yeah. He feels like he has
like
the grace of God about him because he's not being afflicted by anything.
Some World War Z level stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so we didn't talk about the reporter at all, but he gets into the helicopter with this reporter that's kind of been nagging him, but is not like the worst person. She's no Dick
just pops into
Thornburg.
the air traffic control tower, you know. I know this is pre 9/11, but still, that's like never gonna happen.
If you give me this story, I'll have your baby.
Yeah, what was that line?
I don't
out
know.
of nowhere.
Well, she saw that she was gonna get her first big break,
and his retort was, "That's not the kind of ride I'm looking for."
Well, okay, but that got a laugh out of multiple people in the room when we were watching it.
Okay,
so it was effective in some way.
It was effective. It was just her. I think her line was just so out of the blue.
Yeah, and then it's never
really
referenced.
Forced.
Yeah, it was just like totally.
Okay,
I can just imagine the actress was like, "Wait, I have to say this? Really? Like this is my line?"
Yeah. So the idea of John McClane's first plan when they board the helicopter is, let's stop the moving plane by getting in front of it.
With a helicopter.
Because that'll just slow it right down.
Knowing these terrorists, I think they would just say, all right, fly right through that.
Now, I do think, crashing a helicopter into a plane would ground the plane. It would.
Yeah.
But what is the goal here? Just tell me.
He wanted to obscure their view so they couldn't take off, but it's still like putting people in danger.
Yeah.
So they don't go along with that. So his second idea is, okay, just drop me off on the wing.
Yeah. I'll stop something.
This is where Indiana Jones comes back into play. That's something he would do.
Yeah, and this is where the landing strip extends like fruit roll up, just infinitely long. I was literally transported to Fast and the Furious 6, where they're just on that runway for 20 minutes.
Yep.
And yeah, there we get.
I like when he jumps onto the wing of the plane from the helicopter. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, dummy, what are you going to do now? And I think when he lands, he goes, crap, what am I going to do now? So I think they are realizing
There's
some
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I like those little jokes about how they're aware it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, so first guy, Grant, the lieutenant who defected or betrayed him, is thrown into they have a short tussle and he's thrown into the plane engine. Wouldn't that ground the plane?
I don't know how planes work.
I'm pretty sure.
Answer is yes.
Yes.
There you go. You can ask.
Because I'm
AJ.
pretty sure planes' engines can be stopped simply by a bird strike. So
Well, no, I would assume not because, I mean...
no, they can. Planes have
Really?
been downed by bird strikes.
Well, I mean, like, I can imagine one bird going into an engine pretty regularly. Like, wouldn't that be a regular thing?
Yeah, but
So-
planes have
The
multiple
difference
engines.
is there are redundancies, but they're already mid-flight. This is, okay, this just happened. We're not going to take off and, make the whole journey, considering this just happened. We're going to check on this.
Our baddies are killed ultimately by the leaking fuel, which apparently you can just pop off with your hand.
If you didn't know, a lot of fuel comes through the wing. I didn't know that. I learned
Well,
that
I mean,
in this
the
movie.
Well,
That
they
is
do
engines
engines
refuel
are
the
next to
yeah.
the wing, so.
Well, I know it, but I just didn't know that. I'm being actually honest.
Yeah.
I just loved how easy it was for him to just here's the fuel cap, just like a car, just pop it right off.
I mean,
There's the fuel.
Let it all
all right. To
spill
be
out.
fair, it was a little different from that. He was like hanging on to it, and then the guy like
Kicked him off.
kicked
Yeah.
him off, and it yanked it.
Okay,
So-
fair enough.
Whatever.
But that leads to our, the final sequence, him lighting the light,
Yippee-ki-yay.
dropping the line, and we get to see, in my opinion, one of the best plane explosions I've ever seen, or explosions in general. I'm not saying the situation, the lead up to it, is believable in any way, but the sheer spectacle of that explosion was glorious.
I will say that it's really interesting watching this movie because there will be build-ups to explosions where I'm thinking, oh wow, yeah, like that would happen, and then the explosion happens, and I'm like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like, and that's
they know
exactly
it.
what happened here because I love the idea that he just lights his lighter and tosses it onto the oil spill or the fuel spill, but it was such a straight line.
I know.
That I just
And
could
there's
not,
one camera
like,
angle
no,
where
that's not
it
how
shows it
works.
from the plane's view as it's taking off. You see
And it
this
leaps
fire.
through the air,
It is
carries through the air.
flying so fast.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is as long as the stream is connected, the flame can still travel.
No,
but
it's not
the
it's
speed
not
of
the
it is
traveling.
crazy.
That's what.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
the speed.
No, you're
But
right.
also the explosion, although good, was almost like a Death Star kind
Yeah.
of explosion.
I probably shouldn't be nitpicking these little things when the movie has already done so much more ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe I should just
Let
lay
it
off.
fly.
No, exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. It's silly, but it's fun, and I like it.
So it's fun, but I do think there could have been a better way to do that. You know what I mean? I think they were trying to go for the most dramatic way to finish things, and it feels a little dated. I think that's the problem with it. It's just haha, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Something about this, I don't know why this little bitty detail bothers me, but I hated how long it took him to light the fuse. Not the fuse, but the trail.
Yeah.
He's like
It was
lying on the
basically
ground,
a
just
fuse at
slowly
this
like
point.
turning over.
For effect.
And I
He
know,
just fell off a
Yippee-ki-yay.
moving plane. Okay, maybe he did take realistically. He's like, oh crap, maybe I should do something.
a better way to do this, if you wanted something more exciting, and I'm not saying this movie's not exciting, it is, but would have been if he landed, then the fuel trail was, 15 feet away. And then he's realizes it and he's frantically gets to it and lights it instead of just rolling over and lighting it.
Honestly would have loved if they found a way to, while he was on the plane, he had stuffed, his jacket in there. But what if he had dumped an explosive or something in that spot and his whole fight was just a distraction so that they didn't look there?
Or he snagged a grenade off of one of these guys.
Yeah,
just
something
pulled
like
a
that,
grenade and one of them
honestly.
realizes
And
that, uh-oh.
Instead of trying to light this big fuel line where, the wind is probably disrupting that fuel flow already.
Hey, but then the planes would have been able to land on the fire strip.
No, I don't
Yeah.
know.
You know?
I know when you're in the moment, you can't think super duper clearly, but that scene with the grenades, with how long they took to be sent in there, I was just thinking, like, man, why doesn't he just, like, one by one, just, like, toss them back out?
We were thinking the same thing.
I just thought, like, that would have been hilarious.
One, up, 2, 3. And, like, they just explode.
Hey, hot potato.
Yeah. Anyway, planes land, happy ending, embrace, Holly
Why
and
does
McClane
this keep
embrace.
happening to us?
Adrian!
Yep. It pretty much the same ending to the first
Right.
one. But any final thoughts on the story here, guys?
John McClane.
Sounds like no.
No, not really.
Not much than we've already mentioned.
I'm excited for the third movie now.
Yeah.
I bet it won't let me down.
We'll see.
I've never seen it.
I will not say anything about it. I want you to go in completely blind. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we will talk about this movie's reviews, give our own scores, get into some box office, and talk about how this franchise is doing at number 2. Welcome back. Let's talk about Die Hard 2.
Die harder.
Die Harder.
Die
Should've just called it
Hardest.
Die Harder.
Should have been the third
How
one.
do you die harder?
In this one, they sure show you maybe how. David, you got our scores there in a little bowl. You
No.
want to pull them at random?
I don't got any of those.
Do it.
All right, fine.
Reach
I got
down
it.
in
All right,
that
I got 'em.
bowl.
All right, let's do it.
Grab him.
All right, first score. Let's see. First score is Irina with a 7, who I'm assuming you were going for a 7.5, and you're like, nah.
Nah. I don't know. I think it was entertaining enough. Having gone from Die Hard to this, I was expecting a little more personality from it, but it kind of went in the direction of a kind of a generic action film. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. I still enjoy that, but it does tend to make my eyes glaze over, and especially when it's a little beyond ridiculous without redeemable character qualities. So 7. I just
That's perfectly.
I don't know.
I know.
How to,
It's entertaining enough.
You would agree that it is rewatchable.
it is, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it's
Another
not
7.
bad.
it's not bad, and it's, you know,
Wait, no,
It's like
those explosions.
Okay, I would say it's Yeti football good.
there's enough.
Yeah, football
there's
good,
enough
yeah.
snow, guys.
Wait. What?
Yeti football good, you know.
Oh.
Like the
classic
requirement
expression.
that David has for all of his movie watching.
Oh yeah, if it's
The
got Yetis in
criteria.
football, 7 out of 10. And there's only one movie I know that has Yetis in football, and that movie is.
Am I
David?
saying it this
David,
time?
can you tell
I
us
have
what
to make
that
fun of
movie is?
myself.
Well,
Okay.
I'm giving you a
A segue into your
Yeah,
review.
The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
yeah. Which wait, what did you give it again? Sorry.
I gave it like a 7.
a 7, like a 7.0.
For our new listeners, we have a running thing where David did, and this is real. He gave The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7 on one of our oldest episodes. And he stands by that because
Okay.
the movie is, every frame looks good. It's got
Guys.
Yeti football.
Yeah.
It's
You
got
know there are
Brendan
listeners
Fraser.
out there who really like Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and you're
Yeah.
spitting in their face.
What do you
there's
mean? No, we're
you
giving
and
them
one
a
other
beacon.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am the beacon.
You are someone they can
The
relate
beacons
to.
are lit.
But
David calls for aid.
going back to my score, I think this is an enjoyable film, and if I were to binge the Die Hard series, I wouldn't skip it, but I might use this one to, I don't know, paint my nails or
do
you
the
know,
laundry.
do something while it's playing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Work out, maybe.
maybe.
That's my thing. And when I binge a franchise, I'm OCD. I cannot skip one of them.
Yeah.
Like this,
You really are.
it hurts me when it comes to franchises like Fast and
Indiana
Furious, where I'm like,
Jones.
Yeah.
oh yeah, you got to watch the 4th one. But with Fast and Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, the second one isn't a bad movie. But I'm like, this will not be a complete
And we watched it.
binge if I don't watch it.
Hey, I'll counter you.
It's got Tyrese Gibson in it.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I'll counter you with Tyrese Gibson.
Exactly.
All right, you want to pull the next score there?
Why not? Next score is Noah with an 8.
All right.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
I'll detract half a point.
You
7.5.
don't have to.
Well, no, I will because I think it doesn't deserve an 8. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and that's about all I had.
Well, what else do you want?
Substance.
Oh, you don't need that.
So
Yeah.
you're not gonna call
So-
it later?
So, I thought it was a really fun movie, and that was about it. It just had a number of flaws with, the villain was pretty weak, their motivations weren't amazing, McClane wasn't who he was in the first one, even the side characters were less interesting. So I just overall 7.5 was, I think,
Sounds about right.
I think
Because it's still fun.
being all right, because it is a really
yeah.
fun, little jaunt into the world. They had a couple of cool things. The effect of the plane landing on, well, not landing, I should say.
Landing.
It
but-
landed, but
Landing with
it
style.
it was a crash.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought overall, I think it's a decent movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just followed up from the first one. It's not as good.
Yeah. Doesn't compare favorably. Next.
Next score. Hey, Reese with a 7.
Oh,
Yeah, so I think I'm starting to see a trend here that I think maybe could change with AJ, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. Maybe David. I don't know. Who knows?
You never know. I could give
David's
it a
a
10.
wild card.
You never know.
Yeah, this movie, it does more, but accomplishes less than the first film.
Ouch.
Like it does what your typical sequel is supposed to do. It ups the ante. Everything's bigger. Everything's badder. It's not a tower. It's all these planes in the sky, and everything's just dialed to 11. But in doing that, it does maintain the entertainment value, but it loses the charm of what made the first one great. And that was, you got this everyman getting through this crazy situation. And it's one of those things that Die Hard is a movie that it probably shouldn't have ever had any sequels, because it's a standalone type thing.
I
And
agree.
A character like that only comes into a situation like that once in his life. It's
Yeah.
weird that
This
someone...
is why I compare him a little bit to the Brad Pitt in World War Z, where it's
Yeah.
like, how does this keep happening to you?
Yeah, exactly. That's like 3 Die Hard movies in one.
Exactly.
but Reese, I had the same opinion about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, but Pirates of the Caribbean it's a fantasy.
yeah, it's
like
all silly.
The thing is, like, I can buy it a little more in Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, I can too. I just think it should have remained as the one.
Yeah, but my main issue with this is just John McClane is no longer the resourceful everyman that he was in the first one, and now he's the action hero that could easily be played by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. He still gets a couple of really good quips in there, but it's just not the same. That said, I was entertained by this film through and through. I thought the event, the terrorist event, with the setup of it was engaging. I think it just keeps upping itself in ridiculousness, which makes it just, I can't take my eyes off of it. I'm having a good time. I'm munching my popcorn. But yeah, it does pale in comparison to the first, even though the action is intensified. So 7 out of 10.
Go.
All right. Next up, who will it be?
We all know.
It's going to be AJ with a 4.5.
Ooh, interesting.
Ouch. So let me try to organize my response to this. And everyone has said everything, and I haven't disagreed with anything that anyone has said so
Right.
far. I think everybody's recognized the flaws with this movie. And I'm, echoing basically this movie. I kind of make it draw comparisons to what happened with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, where you have this amazing first movie. And then the same thing happened here where, someone else came along and tried to capitalize on the success of what, made the first so great, but they distilled it too much and distilled only to the, the action and just, cranked up the action to make it the exclusive feature of the movie, in my opinion. Yeah. And to its detriment. And normally that's fine. Like, action movies have their place. Like, I love, silly action like, Swayze and Roadhouse. Like, That's a goofy movie, but I can absolutely be entertained by that. I'm not, some snob. Some of you might think so, but I can appreciate that. I think what really kind of threw me off was how much I was surprised by the first one in rewatching it, and what I appreciated about it most was the human character and the emotional development of the everyman of McClane and even Holly and everything like that. And when that was lacking in this, that just juked me out too much. And if it was a Robert Frost poem, instead of taking the road less traveled and trying to balance an action hero with actual character development, they just went full action. So they didn't take that road less traveled. They just went the predictable route of all action. They traded out McClane's kind of still out there and goofy, but his one-liners in the first movie, they just felt right. In this one, they just cut a couple of those out and cranked in more F-bombs, and I don't know, it cheapened it in my opinion. It didn't help that I really did not find any motivation for what was going on, especially from the villain side. And it's almost a complete reversal from Hans Gruber in the first. You have someone who is, self-admittedly saying, I'm doing this for the money. And then we'll have a little sprinkle of costume of, the terrorism or the manifesto kind of motivation aspect on it, just, as a facade. This one was a complete opposite, where he's trying to seem more like some global terrorist, but, in the end, if you really analyze his motivation, it all comes down to money. And especially with the twist of the Spec Ops guys, being in it on the same side as the bad guys. So, I felt it hard to engage myself because I was wanting that character development. And even in the airport early on, I felt like we were going that direction, but I just couldn't stick with it. And maybe it was just my state of mind. I was, going in expecting a repeat of the first with that surprise of depth to it, not, just wanting to see an action movie. And that's what we got. And so, it didn't capture my attention that way. And I'll admit, the first time I watched this earlier in the week, something called me away with 25 minutes left of the movie, and I was not in a hurry to finish the movie. And so that's why this gets such a low score for me, because it really did not draw my interest at all. And even rewatching it fully the second time, I'm like, y'all are talking about these explosions in the second half of the movie, and I barely remember them. Even though I was watching the movie, it just, for whatever reason, I could not just sink my teeth into it. And I guess I was still hoping for some reasoning behind it. And maybe that's my Achilles heel, was having that familiarity with the whole plot device of the airport and the operations of that. And I couldn't get past the suspension of disbelief. And I don't know.
If this had been the first movie in this franchise, it'd be much more forgivable, I feel like. Because it's this is the tone that this is going for all along.
It really just threw me off because I was expecting one thing, didn't get that. And, in its own right, yes, it's got action. So I just was not framed for watching a movie for that context, I guess. And it didn't capture my attention. So that's why it's really, in the end, kind of so low for me.
All right. Fair enough.
I guess that means I'm last. And I'm going to go ahead and stay on trend with everybody else. Split the difference with a 7.5.
All right.
I feel like a lot of us talked about how this one was a little difficult to rate, especially when you come off the heels of something as big as Die Hard 1. I thought I was going to be on the high end, to be honest. I thought 7.5 was going to be the highest. I really was caught off guard.
We're just both on the highest.
Well, no, the highest was Reese.
No, 7.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, you and I both
Mine
gave it
was
a 7.5.
Wait, didn't someone give it an 8?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. You
dropped his
did,
to
but you dropped
7.5.
it. That's why.
Yeah.
I read the paper, and that's what it was in my head.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, I think, and I am on the higher end, but we're all really close. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I kind of brought it up before, but my brain had to make some alterations to adjust with the movie, because when you're watching this, you think, this is coming off of Die Hard, that's what I'm expecting this to be.
Yeah.
The beginning of the movie, you're like, okay, this is kind of like Die Hard, and it progresses, and you're like, oh, a little bit less like Die Hard. But once you can understand that this is not Die Hard and it's going for campier, I think you can relax and enjoy it more. And that's kind of what I did. And I just relaxed and let the goofiness ensue. Yeah. And in the end, it found its own place. I guess maybe the director change was obvious, when you really see the difference between the two.
Yeah.
But this is it's just fun in its own way. And I don't know what to expect moving forward, but if it's anything like this, I mean, maybe I'll have some fun. We'll see.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, I noticed that, I think, what was his name? Art Evans. He's wearing Argyle throughout the entire movie, and then the guy from the first movie, his name is Argyle.
Yeah.
So
callback to him.
I don't know if it was supposed to be a callback, but he is wearing Argyle.
Or they're related for some reason.
I don't know. Yeah. He's wearing that sort of pattern. And also, Rena and I talked about this. I meant to bring it up earlier, but John Leguizamo is in this?
Yeah.
He had a bunch of lines, and he was supposed to be a much bigger part in this. And you know why he was not?
He's too short.
He was too freaking short. They're like, nah, he's short. Nah, cut his lines. He's out of this. Short guy. Anyway,
poor guy.
I wanted to make sure that was said because I think it's hilarious and I love John Leguizamo.
Yeah, it's like a blink and you miss it. It's like, wait, did I just see Luigi?
I'm pretty sure there was a scene where I saw him and I thought, is that Leguizamo? And I quickly decided, no, that's not. It can't be. I'm wrong.
Yeah, that is.
But it
Sure
was.
is. And he had one line in this movie.
It was on the phone and it wasn't even voiced by him.
Oh yeah, that's right. They had someone else voice it.
Yeah,
I thought it was hilarious. Sorry, John Leguizamo. You're awesome.
Yeah. He has a short voice too, so we can't really hear that.
Exactly. So yeah, I ended with a 7.5. I stand by it. Yeah.
Fun. Good movie.
What else do you stand by, David?
Football, Yetis.
There you
John
go.
Leguizamo.
All right. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
Okay, so with me obviously bringing down the average, we have a 6.7 for the group.
All right.
Otherwise,
that sounds right.
Actually sounds
a little higher. Among our other titles, that puts it just below John Carter at a 6.8 and above Van Helsing at a 6.5.
All right.
Wait, it was below John Carter?
Yeah, by 0.1.
Sorry,
Okay.
you can hear me.
I think so.
No, that's fair. It's in the right ballpark.
Honestly, John Carter is one of those where you can tell that a lot of work went into the making of that film.
And I do think that movie's mildly underrated.
Yeah,
It is.
it is.
I think it is.
Well,
so.
David,
I think that's fair.
David, you said it more efficiently than I did, was you were able to make that switch, realizing this is an action movie now, whereas I did not, obviously. So that was the critical difference.
The unfortunate thing for you is I think you can see behind the curtain more than we can. You know a little bit more of the making of, as far as you understand the planes and maybe the firearm technology. So I can see why, if I knew more about it, if it was more about Rocket League and Super Smash Brothers Melee, I would hate it.
Also, I very much agreed with your comment about this being like a girl with a dragon tattoo situation.
Definitely.
I think the difference between ones that gave it a higher score is that I don't think Girl with a Dragon Tattoo replaced it. Totally tonally different. It's an action movie, but I don't think the action it replaced the old movie with was anything to, get excited about. It was like it wanted to be an action movie, but it didn't even succeed at that.
Right.
And this one was a completely different type of action movie than the first one, but at least it was more of a spectacle, and it was but I totally get what you're saying.
No, I agree with you too, and I think really this calls into importance, like I mentioned, like the context in which you view this movie, and we've said this a number of times, like your state of mind, like how you did at work that day, or whatever. Like if you're going to enjoy an action movie that day, then you're going to enjoy it. If you're not in the mood for that, then that affects it big time. So that's just kind of the time frame of where I was at. Maybe just a dumb action movie wasn't what I was really looking for at all, I guess.
If you were with us, AJ, and we were having a good time and we were drunk and we were just sitting down to watch a goofy movie like this, I think you would have enjoyed it.
I agree. And that's it's important to highlight that, that the numbers don't speak everything. Because we've all really said the same, comments of how this movie differed from the first and where it could have done better. We've all said the same thing. So
in the end, I do think a lot of the time with our movies, we balance out pretty well, where some of us aim a little high, some aim a little low.
Our overall score is pretty accurate.
Sorry, I'm just trying to save face with our audience.
6.7 though, honestly, is not that bad. I think that's actually a perfect score for this movie if you take out maybe my like for gratuitous shark jumping.
Do you want to see how much our scores align with the critics, guys?
Yeah.
I'll try to not look.
All right, so on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 69%.
Hey-o.
Nice.
Which is in the fresh zone, just under 70%, and an audience score of 70.
So we were literally right there.
Yeah, and we are literally right there with Metacritic. Metacritic has a 67, which is deemed generally positive reviews, with an audience score that is higher at 8.5. And on IMDb, this movie has a decent 7.2. So definitely a come down from the first one. Although if I don't have the first one, the notes in front of me, but I think the first one had an abnormally low Metacritic audience score that didn't make any sense, which I chalked up to being a fluke. So we'll ignore that. I don't know why I brought it up again, but there you go. It had decent reviews across the board. Definitely a downgrade from the first movie, but as far as sequels to classics go, it's not one of the worst.
Right.
That's for sure. With that said, let's go on to the box office. All right. Die Hard 2 released on July 6th, 1990. It released against the Jetsons, the movie, which I didn't even know existed. And it was also playing against movies that were already in the theater, such as Days of Thunder and Dick Tracy. The budget was $70 million, which is a little over double what the first one was. With inflation today, that would be a $140 million budget.
Dang.
Wow.
So, worldwide, and we're including inflation since this was a 1990 release. In today's dollars, what do you think Die Hard 2 made at the worldwide box office? Let's go Noah. No, Noah, I did you first last time. I'll go with AJ first this time.
You said budget was what, 140?
Yeah, 140. The inflated budget is 140. Yep.
Let's say 250.
250. David?
I'm going to go with 450, Bob.
450. Irina?
Let's do 280.
All right. 280. Noah?
317.
Man,
317.
did I aim that high?
I don't know. Maybe.
No, I
Maybe
don't
not.
think so.
Well, I'm like
No, you're
large
counting for
range.
inflation.
you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, you are correct.
Look
The
at
movie
that.
had a worldwide inflated gross of $478 million.
Dang, I was pretty close.
Dang,
then.
even it outpaced you.
But if we were going with back in the day, AJ would have won it with $240 million worldwide.
Okay.
I just don't even know, like, 1990 is hard to gauge because it's not too old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's still like, there's inflation to factor in somewhat.
Yep. And in this case, it's still a significant amount of inflation. I mean,
Yeah.
$240 million worldwide to $478 million.
Well, that was double.
Yeah, that's pretty much double. So yeah, the movie was a massive success. It more than doubled the first film.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they were expecting it to be
Yeah.
big, but not this big. Huge success.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's highly reliant upon the first film.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of that is because
Yep.
the first was so big.
Yep, it's coasting off
But
of those
it also
fumes for
couldn't
sure.
have been that bad because we've seen movies that are coasting off of the heels of other big movies and not do as well.
I think you mean riding off the coattails, or
You understand, you get it. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I think the movie actually had decent legs though too. I
Yeah.
think it opened to something like 21 million and made 118 domestically, which also inflated as 235 million. That's
Dang.
today, those numbers, if that released in the summer, it'd be like probably in the top 3 or 4 movies of the summer.
Right.
So massive success. Like
it
there's no
did its job.
That's why the franchise side of this is a very short discussion, because when you have such a successful movie, you're going to get another one. And if everyone's game to do another one, you're getting another one. Even if everyone isn't game, you're getting another one. It's
Bruce
gonna
Willis,
happen.
you're doing it.
Or if you're not doing it, someone is. That's just the nature of franchises like
Right.
this.
Dwayne
And-
The Rock Johnson is like 18 years old. We can do it with him.
Yeah, perhaps the only thing that I'm surprised about is this one was cranked out in 2 years.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah, the next one, it took 5 years to come out.
Wow.
I haven't done my research for the next one. I usually do that on that episode, but I would imagine they were just trying to get all their ducks in a line, and it was like, oh, when's Bruce Willis available? He's a big star now. John McTiernan's interested in coming back. How can we get him back on board? Because he was the director of the original Die Hard. So it's, my guess is it was just trying to align the stars to, for the best possible sequel. And which, who knows? Does it benefit the third one, taking more time off and coming back to it with, the original director?
Yes.
Well, we'll see. We'll
see.
It's and like you said, that 2-year gap really does help, with that momentum of riding the coattails.
Right.
Like look at, I know it's James Cameron, so that it's a factor, but look at Terminator and Terminator 2. I think it's 6-7 years between them.
Yeah. Sequels used to, if it wasn't a slasher film, sequels used to take a good amount of time to come out.
Yeah.
It wasn't as quick of a turnaround. But yeah, the next movie we'll be covering is Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Not Die Hardest?
No, not Die Hardest, unfortunately.
Oh, darn.
Well, that would have just been on the poster. It would have been called Die Hard 3.
Die Hardest.
Die Hardest. Yeah, it's surprising they've got 5 movies and they haven't used Die Hardest.
I think they realized after doing this one, they're like, we're not doing that again.
Yeah, but I'm excited for this next one. It's the one I am least familiar with in the entire franchise, and I've heard things about it. I won't say positive or negative, but I've heard things about it. So there you go.
It involves a duck.
Yeah. So next week, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Goodbye, guys.
You're supposed to stay in your seat until the plane reaches the terminal. No freaking flyer miles for you.